Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been living in the middle of nowhere for 3 months now. The research station in northern Canada was small, cold, and lonely. Most people would have gone crazy by now, but Elena liked the quiet. It gave her time to think, time to work, and most importantly, time to forget. She wasn't alone at the station. 2 other scientists had volunteered for this mission. There was David, a geology expert who spent most of his time studying rock samples and complaining about the weather. Then there was Lisa, their communications specialist who kept them connected to the outside world. The 3 of them had become like a small family, even though they were all here for different reasons. Elena's reason was simple. She needed to get away from everything back home, away from the memories, away from the pain, away from all the people who kept telling her it wasn't her fault. But deep down, she knew it was. If she had been a better scientist, a better researcher, maybe she could have saved her daughter. Maybe she could have found a cure before it was too late. That's why she jumped at the chance to come to this remote location. The government had detected strange electromagnetic signals coming from this area, signals that didn't match anything they had seen before. Most scientists thought it was just some natural phenomenon, maybe something to do with the northern lights, or underground mineral deposits. But Elena had a feeling it was something more. For weeks they had been tracking these signals. They would appear at random times, always in the same general area, but never in the exact same spot. David thought they were coming from deep underground. Lisa believed they might be some kind of radio interference from old military equipment. But Elena had her own theory, one she hadn't shared with the others yet. The signals were too organized, too purposeful to be natural. They had patterns, almost like a language. Elena had spent countless hours analyzing the data, looking for any clue about what might be causing them. She had equipment that most scientists could only dream of, all thanks to the government funding. This project. It was on a Tuesday morning when everything changed. Elena was checking the overnight readings when she noticed something unusual. The signals had been stronger than ever before, and they were all coming from one specific location about 2 miles north of the station. This had never happened before. Usually the signals moved around, but this time they stayed in one place for over 6 hours. Elena grabbed her winter gear and told the others she was going to investigate. David wanted to come with her, but she convinced him to stay and monitor the equipment. Lisa offered to maintain radio contact. Elena needed to see this for herself. The walk through the snow was difficult, but Elena had gotten used to the harsh conditions over the past few months. She followed her GPS device toward the signal source, her heart beating faster with each step. She had a feeling that whatever she was about to find would change everything. When she reached the coordinates, at first she didn't see anything unusual, just snow, ice, and a few scattered rocks. But as she walked around the area, her electromagnetic detector started going crazy. The readings were off the charts. Whatever was causing the signals was right here, somewhere very close. Elena started digging in the snow with her hands, following the strongest signal readings. After about 20 minutes, her gloved hand hit something hard. But it wasn't rock or ice. It felt smooth, almost warm to the touch. She dug faster now, her excitement growing with each handful of snow she moved aside. What she uncovered made her stop breathing for a moment. It was clearly not from this world. The surface was a dark metallic color, but it seemed to shift and change as she looked at it. Sometimes it appeared black, sometimes deep blue. Sometimes it had a silver shine. The material felt alive somehow, responding to her touch in ways that no earthly metal should. Elena realized she was looking at part of something much larger. She used her small shovel to clear away more snow and ice, revealing what was obviously some kind of vehicle or vessel. It was partially buried under what looked like years of accumulated ice and snow. This thing had been here for a long time. The craft was about the size of a small airplane, but its shape was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. It was curved and organic-looking, as if it had grown rather than been built. There were no visible seams or joints, just one continuous surface that flowed like frozen water. Elena's hands were shaking as she contacted Lisa on her radio. She tried to keep her voice calm as she reported finding some kind of unusual object. She didn't mention her suspicions about what it might be, not yet. She needed to be sure first. As Elena walked around the craft, looking for any kind of opening, she noticed that the electromagnetic readings were coming from inside. Something in there was still active, still sending out those signals they had been tracking for weeks. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't dead. She found what looked like a door or hatch on one side of the craft. There was no handle or obvious way to open it, but when Elena placed her hand on the surface, it began to warm up. Slowly, silently, a section of the hull dissolved away, revealing a dark opening just large enough for a person to crawl through. Elena knew she should go back to the station and report this immediately. She should contact the authorities and let them handle whatever this was. But she also knew what would happen if she did that. The military would take over, and she would never get another chance to see what was inside. This could be the greatest discovery in human history, and she was the first person to find it. Taking a deep breath, Elena grabbed her flashlight and crawled through the opening into the craft. The inside was even more amazing than the outside. The walls seemed to glow with a soft blue light that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. The air was warm and had a strange, sweet smell that reminded Elena of flowers she couldn't quite identify. The interior was larger than it should have been based on the external size of the craft. Elena found herself in what looked like a small room with curved walls and a floor that felt soft under her feet. Everything was organic and flowing, as if the entire ship was alive. At the center of the room was something that made Elena gasp out loud. It was clearly some kind of bed or sleeping chamber, and lying in it was a figure that was obviously not human. The being was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that had the same soft glow as the walls. It appeared to be female, with long limbs, and delicate features that were beautiful but definitely not from Earth. Elena moved closer, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. The being appeared to be sleeping or unconscious, but Elena could see that she was breathing. Her chest rose and fell slowly, and there were faint lights moving under her translucent skin like tiny stars. This was it. This was proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. Elena was looking at an actual alien being, and she was still alive. The implications were staggering. Everything would change once this news got out. Science, religion, politics, everything would have to be reconsidered. Elena made the biggest decision of her life right there in that alien craft. Instead of immediately calling for help, she decided to bring this being back to the research station. She told herself it was for scientific reasons, that she needed to study this discovery properly before it got taken away by government agencies. But deep down, she knew the real reason. This alien woman might hold the key to technologies that could save lives, maybe even cure diseases that human medicine couldn't touch. If Elena could understand how this being's body worked, how their technology functioned, she might be able to help people the way she had failed to help her own daughter. Elena spent the next hour figuring out how to safely move the alien woman. The sleeping chamber seemed to be some kind of life support system, so Elena was careful not to damage anything as she prepared for transport. She radioed Lisa and David, telling them she had found something important and needed their help, but she didn't explain exactly what. When her colleagues arrived at the crash site, their reactions were exactly what Elena had expected. David stared, in amazement, unable to speak. Lisa immediately wanted to contact headquarters, but Elena convinced them both that they needed to study this discovery for at least 48 hours before reporting it. She argued that once the government got involved, they would lose all access to what could be the most important scientific find in history. It took all three of them working together to carefully transport the alien woman and her life support chamber back to the research station. They set up a secure area in the main lab, doing their best to recreate the environment they had found in the craft. Elena couldn't sleep that night. She sat watching the alien woman, taking notes on every detail she could observe. The being's skin color shifted slightly as she breathed, and the patterns of light under her skin seemed to follow some kind of rhythm. Elena had the strangest feeling that the alien woman was dreaming, and that those dreams were somehow connected to the lights dancing across her skin. As Elena sat there in the quiet lab, surrounded by humming equipment and the soft glow of alien technology, she had no idea what she had really brought back to the station. She thought she was looking at humanity's salvation, a source of knowledge that could help heal the world. She had no way of knowing that she was actually staring at something that could destroy everything she had ever cared about. The alien. Elena had been sitting by the alien woman's side for 36 hours straight. She barely ate, hardly slept, and refused to leave the lab for more than a few minutes at a time. David and Lisa were getting worried about her, but Elena couldn't help herself. This was the most important moment in human history, and she wasn't going to miss a second of it. The alien woman looked so peaceful lying there in her strange sleeping chamber. Her breathing was slow and steady, and those beautiful lights continued to dance under her pale blue skin. Elena had been taking notes on everything, documenting every small change she observed. The patterns of light seemed to follow some kind of cycle, getting brighter and dimmer at regular intervals. Elena had started calling her Lyra in her mind, though she had no idea if the being even had a name. There was something about her face that reminded Elena of her daughter when she was sleeping. The same peaceful expression, the same sense that she was somewhere far away, lost in dreams that no one else could understand. On the morning of the second day, something changed. Elena was reviewing her notes when she noticed that Lyra's breathing pattern had shifted. It was still slow, but now it seemed more purposeful somehow. The lights under her skin were pulsing faster too, almost like a heartbeat that was slowly speeding up. Elena called David and Lisa into the lab. All three of them watched as Lyra's eyelids began to flutter. Her fingers twitched slightly, and she made a soft sound that was almost like a sigh. Elena felt her own heart racing. After all these hours of waiting, it was finally happening. When Lyra's eyes opened, Elena forgot how to breathe. They were unlike anything she had ever seen. Large and completely black, but with tiny points of light floating in them like stars in the night sky. For a moment, Lyra just stared at the ceiling, as if she was trying to remember where she was. Then she turned her head and looked directly at Elena. Their eyes met, and something incredible happened. Elena suddenly felt a warm sensation in her mind, like someone had just turned on a light in a dark room. Images began to flash through her thoughts, but they weren't her own memories. She saw a world unlike Earth, with purple skies and silver trees that swayed without any wind. She saw cities that looked like they were made of crystal and light, with buildings that seemed to grow from the ground like plants. She saw other beings like Lyra, tall and graceful, moving through this beautiful alien landscape with purpose and urgency. The images were so vivid that Elena felt like she was actually there. She could smell the air of that distant world, feel the warmth of its strange sun on her skin. But there was something wrong with the paradise she was seeing. The silver trees were withering, the crystal cities were cracking, and the purple sky was slowly turning gray. Elena realized that Lyra was showing her these things somehow, putting the images directly into her mind. It was impossible, but it was happening. This was how Lyra communicated, not with words, but with thoughts and pictures and feelings. More images came flooding in. Elena saw spacecraft like the one they had found, dozens of them leaving the dying world. She understood that Lyra's people were explorers, scouts sent out to find new homes for their species. But there was something else in the images, something that made Elena feel uneasy, even though she couldn't quite understand what it was. David and Lisa were standing nearby, watching in amazement as Elena stared into Lyra's strange eyes. They couldn't see the images or feel what Elena was experiencing. To them, it just looked like two people staring at each other in complete silence. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the connection broke. Elena stumbled, backward, her head spinning from everything she had just experienced. Lyra sat up slowly in her chamber, moving with a fluid grace that was beautiful to watch. She looked around the laboratory with those star-filled eyes, taking in every detail. Elena tried to speak, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Hello," she managed to say. "My name is Elena. We found you. We brought you here to help you." Lyra tilted her head slightly, like a bird listening to a sound it had never heard before. Then she reached out with one long, elegant hand and gently touched Elena's arm. The moment their skin made contact, Elena felt that warm sensation. In her mind again. This time, the images were different. Elena saw herself from Lyra's perspective, saw how she had looked when she first entered the crashed spacecraft. She felt Lyra's confusion and fear, but also her gratitude. The alien woman understood that Elena had saved her life by bringing her somewhere safe, but along with the gratitude, Elena sensed something else. Lyra was looking for something, searching for some sign or signal that Elena couldn't identify. There was a sadness in those shared thoughts, a deep loneliness that reminded Elena of her own grief. David stepped forward cautiously. "Elena, are you okay? What's happening?" Before Elena could answer, David accidentally knocked over a tray of instruments. As the metal tools clattered to the floor, one of them sliced across his hand, leaving a deep cut that immediately began to bleed. What happened next made all three humans gasp in amazement. Lyra moved faster than Elena thought possible, crossing the room in what seemed like a single fluid motion. She knelt beside David and gently took his injured hand in both of hers. Elena watched as Lyra's skin began to glow more brightly, the lights under the surface moving toward her hands like tiny rivers of starlight. David's eyes went wide as he felt a warm, tingling sensation spread up his arm. The pain from his cut disappeared completely. When Lyra finally let go of David's hand, the cut was gone. Not healed, not scarred, but completely gone, as if it had never existed. The skin was perfect, smooth and unmarked. David stared at his hand in disbelief, flexing his fingers and touching the spot where the wound had been. Elena felt her scientific mind racing. This was beyond anything medical science had ever achieved. Lyra hadn't just healed David's cut. She had somehow reversed the damage completely. The implications were staggering. If Lyra could heal injuries like this, what else might she be able to cure? Elena thought about her daughter, about all the nights she had spent in hospital rooms watching helplessly as the disease slowly took her away. She thought about all the other children in those hospitals, all the families going through the same nightmare she had endured. If Lyra's abilities could be understood, studied, maybe replicated somehow, Lisa was recording everything on her tablet, her hands shaking with excitement. "This is incredible," she whispered. "Elena, do you realize what this means? She could revolutionize medicine, change everything we know about healing?" But Elena was focused on Lyra's face. The alien woman looked tired after healing David's wound, as if the process had taken something out of her. There was also something in her expression that Elena couldn't quite read. It wasn't pride or satisfaction at helping someone. It was more like regret. Lyra returned to her chamber and sat down heavily. She looked at Elena with those star-filled eyes and touched her own chest, right over her heart. More images flowed into Elena's mind, but these were harder to understand. She saw Lyra's people again, but this time they looked different. sadder, somehow diminished. Elena tried to make sense of what she was seeing. There were scenes of healing, of Lyra's people using their abilities to help others. But there were also images of emptiness, of something important being lost or taken away. Elena felt like she was missing some crucial piece of the puzzle. Over the next few hours, Elena tried to communicate more with Lyra through their strange mental connection. She learned that Lyra's people called themselves something that translated roughly as the Shepherds, and that they had been traveling through space for longer than human civilization had existed. Elena also discovered that Lyra was alone on her ship, separated from the rest of her people during some kind of accident or disaster. The alien woman was looking for her companions, hoping to find some sign that they had survived and made it to safety. But there was still something Lyra wasn't sharing, something hidden in the deeper parts of her mind that Elena couldn't access. Every time Elena tried to probe deeper into Lyra's memories, she felt a gentle but firm resistance, like a door that wouldn't open. As night fell, Elena finally allowed herself to rest for a few hours. But her dreams were filled with images of purple skies and crystal cities, of silver trees and beings of light moving through a world that was slowly dying. She woke up feeling more tired than when she had gone to sleep, with the strange sensation that she had been somewhere far away. When Elena returned to the lab in the morning, she found Lyra standing by the window, looking out at the Canadian wilderness with an expression of deep sadness. Elena approached carefully and gently touched the alien woman's shoulder. The images that flowed into Elena's mind this time were different from all the others. They were darker, more complex, filled with concepts that Elena's human brain struggled to understand. She saw balance and exchange, healing and sacrifice, life and something else that she couldn't quite grasp. Elena pulled her hand away, feeling suddenly uneasy. There was something about those last images that frightened her, something that suggested Lyra's healing abilities came with a price that Elena wasn't ready to understand. Elena couldn't stop thinking about her daughter. Ever since Lyra had healed David's cut so effortlessly, the memories had been coming back stronger than ever. She found herself lying awake at night, remembering those final weeks in the hospital. Watching helplessly as her little girl grew weaker and weaker, the guilt was eating her alive. She was a scientist, someone who was supposed to understand how the human body worked. She had access to the best medical research, connections with top doctors around the world, but none of it had mattered. She couldn't save the one person who meant everything to her. Now, watching Lyra move around the research station with that graceful, otherworldly presence, Elena felt a spark of hope she hadn't experienced in years. This alien woman could do things that seemed impossible. Maybe, just maybe, she held the key to understanding diseases that human medicine couldn't touch. Elena had been trying to learn more about Lyra's healing abilities, but the alien woman seemed reluctant to demonstrate them again. When Elena asked, through their mental connection, Lyra would show her beautiful images of her home world, or share memories of her long journey through space. But whenever the topic turned to healing, Lyra would become distant, almost sad. David and Lisa were starting to worry about Elena's obsession. She was spending every waking moment with Lyra, barely eating or sleeping. They tried to convince her to take breaks, to step back and think clearly about what they were dealing with. But Elena couldn't let go. This was too important. It was on the fourth day that everything changed. Elena was alone with Lyra in the lab, trying once again to understand how the healing process worked. She was showing Lyra pictures of her daughter, trying to communicate the pain of losing someone you love to a disease that couldn't be cured. Lyra's response was immediate and overwhelming. The alien woman reached out and placed both hands on Elena's head, and suddenly Elena's mind was flooded with images and sensations unlike anything she had experienced before. She found herself seeing through Lyra's eyes, experiencing memories that went back thousands of years. She saw Lyra's people in their prime, a beautiful and advanced civilization that had mastered the art of healing. They were known throughout their part of the galaxy as miracle workers, beings who could cure any illness and mend any injury. But as Elena watched these ancient memories unfold, she began to notice something disturbing. Every time Lyra's people healed someone, something else would happen. Plants would wither, animals would fall sick, entire ecosystems would begin to struggle and die. At first, Elena thought it was just coincidence. Maybe Lyra's people lived on, a world with natural cycles of growth and decay. But as she witnessed more memories, the pattern became impossible to ignore. The healing always came with a cost, and that cost was always paid by other living things. Elena tried to pull away from the mental connection, but Lyra held on, forcing her to see more. She witnessed the slow destruction of world after world as Lyra's people tried to help various species. Each act of healing required balance, and that balance was maintained by transferring pain, disease, and death to other creatures. The images became more intense, more horrifying. Elena saw entire forests dying overnight after mass healing events. She watched as ocean ecosystems collapsed when Lyra's people cured a water-based species of some devastating plague. She witnessed the extinction of countless innocent creatures, all sacrificed to maintain the cosmic balance that Lyra's people believed was necessary. Elena finally understood why Lyra's homeworld was dying. It wasn't from natural causes or cosmic disaster. Lyra's people had slowly consumed their own planet, transferring so much pain and death to their environment that nothing could survive anymore. They had become refugees not because of war or catastrophe, but because they had literally used up everything around them. When the mental connection finally broke, Elena stumbled backward, her mind reeling from what she had just witnessed. Lyra was looking at her with those star-filled eyes, and for the first time, Elena could see the deep sadness and guilt that the alien woman carried. Through their connection, Lyra tried to explain. Her people didn't choose this method of healing out, of cruelty or selfishness. It was simply how their biology worked. They couldn't heal without transferring the damage somewhere else. It was as natural to them as breathing was to humans. But that didn't make it right. And Lyra knew it. She had watched her people destroy world after world, always justifying their actions by pointing to the lives they had saved. They told themselves that the greater good required these sacrifices, that saving intelligent species was worth the cost of losing plants and animals. Elena felt sick to her stomach. She thought about David's healed hand, about how amazed and grateful they had all been. But now she wondered what had paid the price for that miracle. Had some plant died? Some animal suffered? She hadn't noticed anything at the time, but then again, she hadn't been looking. Over the next few hours, Elena began to observe the area around their research station more carefully. What she found made her blood run cold. Plants that had been healthy and green just days ago were now showing signs of disease. Small animals that used to come near the station were nowhere to be found. The few birds she saw looked sick and weak. The healing of David's cut had cost more than Elena could have imagined. The life force that had been taken from the local ecosystem was small enough that no one had noticed at first. But the effects were spreading. Nature was paying the price for Lyra's moment of kindness. Elena confronted Lyra about what she was seeing, and the alien woman's response was heartbreaking. Through their mental connection, Lyra showed Elena her deepest shame. She knew what her presence was doing to this world, just as she had known what her people were doing to every world they tried to help. But the worst part was yet to come. Lyra revealed that her mission to Earth wasn't about finding refuge for her people. Her species wasn't looking for a new home where they could live peacefully alongside other life forms. They were scouting for worlds with abundant life that could sustain their healing practices. Earth, with its incredible biodiversity and billions of living creatures, was the perfect target. Lyra's people could heal and cure for thousands of years, before they used up all the life force available on this planet. They saw it as a paradise, a place where they could practice their healing arts without the immediate consequences they had faced on their dying world. Elena realized with growing horror that Lyra's crash hadn't been an accident. She was an advanced scout sent to evaluate Earth's suitability for colonization. The signals they had been tracking for weeks weren't random electromagnetic emissions. They were messages, reports that Lyra had been sending back to her people about the incredible wealth of life on this planet. The alien woman tried to justify it, showing Elena images of all the good her people could do. They could cure cancer, heal genetic diseases, mend broken bones in seconds. They could eliminate human suffering in ways that seemed miraculous. All it would cost was the slow death of every other living thing on Earth. Elena thought about her daughter again, about all the children who were dying from diseases that Lyra's people could cure instantly. The temptation was overwhelming. Wouldn't it be worth it to sacrifice plants and animals if it meant saving human lives? Wasn't human consciousness, human achievement, human love more valuable than the mindless existence of trees and insects? But then Elena looked out the window at the Canadian wilderness that was already beginning to show signs of sickness from Lyra's brief presence. She thought about the complex web of life that made Earth so beautiful and unique. She imagined a world where humans lived forever, healthy and strong, but surrounded by the corpses of every other species that had once shared their planet. Elena realized that Lyra was conflicted about her mission. The alien woman had seen too much death, witnessed too much destruction caused by her people's need to heal. She was tired of being part of a species that saved lives by taking them from others. But she was also bound by instincts and biological needs that she couldn't control. As Elena stared into Lyra's sad, beautiful eyes, she understood that they were both trapped. Elena by her desperate need to undo the tragedy of her daughter's death, and Lyra by her species' nature as cosmic parasites who consumed entire worlds in their quest to heal and help. The research station suddenly felt very small and isolated. Outside, military helicopters were appearing on the horizon, growing larger by the minute. Lisa had been reporting their activities to government contacts, and it seemed their time was running out. Elena looked at Lyra and realized that she had to make an impossible choice. She could help this alien woman complete her mission, potentially saving millions of human lives at the cost of destroying all other life on Earth. Or she could try to stop something that might be humanity's only chance at conquering death and disease forever. As the helicopters grew closer, Elena understood that the most terrifying part of this situation wasn't what Lyra's people might do to Earth. It was how desperately Elena wanted to let them do it, even knowing the price that would have to be paid. The helicopters landed just as the sun was setting, kicking up clouds of snow and making a thunderous noise that shook the entire research station. Elena watched through the window as soldiers poured out of the aircraft, their weapons ready and their movements precise. This wasn't a rescue mission or a routine check. This was a military operation. Elena's heart was pounding as she looked back at Lyra, who was standing completely still in the center of the lab. The alien woman's skin was glowing brighter than Elena had ever seen it, and those star-filled eyes were wide with what looked like fear. Through their mental connection, Elena could feel Lyra's panic. She had never encountered human military forces before, and she didn't understand what was happening. David came running into the lab, his face pale with worry. "Elena, we need to talk. Now." He grabbed her arm and pulled her away from Lyra, lowering his voice to a whisper. "Lisa has been reporting everything to her government contacts. She's been sending updates this whole time." Elena felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. "What do you mean? What kind of updates?" "Pictures, video recordings, detailed reports about Lyra's abilities. Elena, they know everything. They know about the healing, about the telepathic. communication, all of it. David's hands were shaking. Lisa thought she was doing the right thing, keeping the authorities informed about a potential threat. Elena closed her eyes, trying to process what this meant. She had been so focused on protecting Lyra from discovery that she hadn't considered the possibility of betrayal from within their own team. Lisa had seemed supportive, even excited about their discovery, but apparently her loyalty lay elsewhere. The sound of heavy boots on the station's metal floors told Elena that the soldiers were already inside. She could hear voices in the hallway, people giving orders and receiving reports. Time was running out fast. Colonel Harrison entered the lab first, a tall man with gray hair and cold blue eyes that seemed to take in every detail at once. Behind him came a team of scientists in white coats, along with several soldiers carrying equipment that Elena didn't recognize. This was clearly a well-planned operation. "Dr. Rodriguez," the colonel said, his voice calm but authoritative. "I'm Colonel Harrison. We need to discuss your recent discovery." Elena positioned herself between the military team and Lyra, who was still standing motionless but glowing even brighter now. "She's not a threat," Elena said quickly. "She's injured, confused, and far from home. She needs medical attention, not military intervention." Colonel Harrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Dr. Rodriguez, we're not here to harm your alien friend. We're here to help. Our scientists believe that her abilities could revolutionize medicine, potentially saving millions of lives. Imagine being able to cure cancer instantly or heal spinal injuries with just a touch." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The colonel was saying exactly what Elena herself had been thinking for days. But now, knowing what she knew about the true cost of Lyra's healing, those words sounded terrifying instead of hopeful. "You don't understand," Elena said desperately. "Her healing abilities aren't what you think they are. There are consequences, terrible consequences that you can't see." One of the scientists stepped forward, a woman with short brown hair and excited eyes. "Dr. Rodriguez, we've read Lisa's reports. We understand that there may be some environmental side effects, but surely those are manageable. The potential benefits far outweigh any minor ecological concerns." Elena wanted to scream. Minor ecological concerns? They had no idea what they were talking about. They were thinking about Lyra's abilities like some kind of medical technology that could be controlled and regulated. They didn't understand that they were dealing with a biological process that could literally consume entire worlds. Colonel Harrison gestured to his team, and they began setting up their equipment around the lab. "Dr. Rodriguez, we're going to need you to step aside. We have specialists who are trained to handle situations like this." "Situations like this?" Elena laughed bitterly. "Colonel, there has never been a situation like this. You're dealing with something that could destroy everything you're trying to protect." But Elena could see that they weren't listening to her. The scientists were already studying Lyra with their instruments, taking readings and making excited observations. The soldiers were establishing a secure perimeter. Everyone was focused on the incredible opportunity they thought they had discovered. That's when Lyra did something that changed everything. Elena felt a sudden surge of warmth in her mind, and images began flooding her consciousness. But these weren't Lyra's memories this time. They were Elena's own memories, but seen from an outside perspective. Elena saw herself as a young mother, holding her daughter for the first time. She saw birthday parties and bedtime stories, scraped knees and goodnight kisses. She saw the long nights in the hospital, the desperate searches for experimental treatments, the final moments when hope finally died. But Lyra wasn't just observing these memories. She was doing something to them, something that Elena didn't understand at first. The pain of losing her daughter, the crushing guilt and grief that had driven Elena to this remote research station, all of it was slowly beginning to fade away. Elena realized with growing horror that Lyra was trying to heal her emotional wounds the same way she had healed David's cut. The alien woman was attempting to take away Elena's pain by transferring it somewhere else. But where? What would pay the price for Elena's peace of mind? Elena tried to break the mental connection, but Lyra was stronger than she expected. The alien woman was desperate now, surrounded by threats she didn't understand, and she was doing the only thing she knew how to do. She was trying to help Elena the way her people had always helped others, by taking away suffering and passing it on to someone or something else. The process was unlike anything Elena had ever experienced. She could feel her memories changing, her emotions shifting. The sharp pain of grief was being replaced by a strange numbness, as if her feelings were being drained away drop by drop. But at the same time, Elena was becoming aware of something else entering her mind. Lyra's consciousness was flowing into Elena's, mixing with her thoughts and memories in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Elena could suddenly see through Lyra's eyes, feel what the alien woman was feeling, understand concepts that her human brain had never been designed to comprehend. The experience was overwhelming and terrifying. Elena could feel herself changing, becoming something that was neither fully human nor fully alien. Her personality was fragmenting, splitting apart as Lyra's thoughts and instincts merged with her own. Through this strange dual consciousness, Elena became aware of what was happening around them. The healing process was affecting everyone in the room, but not in the way Colonel Harrison and his team expected. Instead of taking away Elena's pain and transferring it to plants or animals outside the station, Lyra was accidentally sharing it with the humans nearby. David was suddenly overcome with grief for the daughter he had never had. Lisa was experiencing phantom memories of loss and failure that belonged to Elena. The soldiers were fighting waves of unexplained sadness and guilt. Even Colonel Harrison was struggling to maintain his composure as foreign emotions flooded his mind, but the process wasn't stopping there. Elena could feel Lyra's alien instincts taking over, responding to the perceived threat of the military team by trying to heal their hostile intentions. The alien woman was attempting to transfer their aggression and suspicion to the local wildlife, just as she had done countless times before on other worlds. Elena heard strange sounds coming from outside the station. Animals were moving in ways that didn't make sense, gathering around the building with an aggression that was completely unnatural for the species in this area. Bears, wolves, and smaller creatures were all responding to the transferred emotions, becoming more territorial and hostile by the minute. Elena realized that she was witnessing the beginning of the same process that had destroyed Lyra's home world. The healing wasn't just affecting individual creatures anymore. It was disrupting the entire ecosystem, creating imbalances that would spread and grow until everything in the area was either dead or driven mad. Through her merged consciousness with Lyra, Elena could see the full scope of what was happening. The alien woman's people had never meant to destroy entire worlds. They had simply tried to help, one healing at a time, never understanding that their gift was really a curse that consumed everything it touched. Elena fought against the mental merger, using every ounce of willpower she possessed to maintain her individual identity. She could feel herself becoming something else, something that could heal but only by destroying. The temptation was incredible. She could cure every disease, solve every problem, heal every wound. All it would cost was everything else. As Elena struggled to hold on to her humanity, she realized that this was the choice she had been avoiding all along. Not whether to help Lyra or stop her, but whether to become her. Whether to accept the power to save lives at the cost of becoming a monster who consumed worlds. Elena felt like she was drowning in someone else's memories. Lyra's consciousness was spreading through her mind like warm honey, sweet and comforting, but impossible to escape. Every second that passed, Elena could feel more of herself slipping away, replaced by alien thoughts and instincts that felt both foreign and strangely natural. Through this merged awareness, Elena could see the full horror of what Lyra's people had done to countless worlds across the galaxy. She witnessed the slow death of entire civilizations, not through war or disaster, but through kindness, through healing, through the desperate desire to help others that had consumed everything in its path. But the worst part wasn't seeing those dead worlds. The worst part was understanding them. Through Lyra's memories, Elena could feel the logic behind every decision, the genuine love and compassion that had driven her people to keep healing even as they watched worlds die around them. They had convinced themselves that saving intelligent life was worth any cost. That consciousness was so precious that everything else could be sacrificed to preserve it. Elena realized that she was thinking the same thoughts now. As her human mind merged with Lyra's alien consciousness, she found herself agreeing with choices that had horrified her just minutes before. The local ecosystem was already showing signs of collapse from their brief presence here. What did it matter if a few more animals died? If some plants withered away? If it meant saving human children from cancer, from genetic diseases, from all the suffering that Elena had watched her own daughter endure? Colonel Harrison was shouting orders to his team, but his voice sounded distant and confused. The emotional transfer was affecting everyone in the room differently. Some of the soldiers were crying without understanding why. Others were becoming aggressive, responding to the alien emotions flooding their minds. The scientists were trying to take readings on equipment that was malfunctioning due to Lyra's unstable energy output. Outside the station, the situation was getting worse. Elena could hear the sounds of animals moving in ways that defied their natural behavior. Bears that should have been hibernating were roaming around the building. Wolves were howling in harmony, as if responding to some primal call. Even smaller creatures like rabbits and squirrels were acting strangely, gathering in large groups and moving with an urgency that seemed almost human-like. Elena understood what was happening. The anger and fear from the humans in the station was being transferred to the local wildlife, just as her grief had been shared with everyone around her. The animals were becoming vessels for human emotions they couldn't understand or control, turning them into something dangerous and unpredictable. Through her connection with Lyra, Elena could see how this process had played out on other worlds. It always started small, with a few healings that seemed harmless. But each healing created an imbalance that required more healing to fix. The process fed on itself, growing larger and more destructive until entire ecosystems collapsed under the weight of transferred suffering. Elena fought against the merger, trying to hold on to her individual identity, but it was like trying to stop an ocean wave with her bare hands. Lyra's consciousness was vast and ancient, shaped by thousands of years of experience across countless worlds. Elena's human mind felt tiny and fragile in comparison. But even as she felt herself changing, Elena remembered why she had become a scientist in the first place. It wasn't just about understanding the world around her. It was about protecting it, about making sure that future generations would have something beautiful and precious to inherit. Elena thought about her daughter, not as she had been in those final terrible weeks, but as she had been on good days, running through gardens, laughing at butterflies, collecting pretty rocks and asking endless questions about how everything worked. Her daughter had loved nature, had been fascinated by every living thing she encountered. What would that little girl think if she knew that her mother had the power to heal every sick child on Earth, but only by destroying everything else her daughter had loved? Would she want Elena to make that choice? Would she be proud of a mother who saved human lives by sacrificing the butterflies and flowers and animals that had brought her so much joy? Elena knew the answer to that question, and it gave her the strength she needed to fight back against the merger. Her daughter would have chosen differently. Her daughter would have found another way, or accepted that some problems couldn't be solved if the solution was worse than the disease. Using every ounce of willpower she possessed, Elena began to separate her consciousness from Lyra's. It was the hardest thing she had ever done, like tearing away pieces of her own soul. But slowly, painfully, she began to reclaim her individual identity. As Elena pulled away from the mental connection, she could see the confusion and fear in Lyra's star-filled eyes. The alien woman had been trying to help, trying to heal Elena's pain the only way she knew how. She didn't understand why Elena was rejecting her gift, why anyone would choose to keep suffering when relief was possible. Elena reached out and took Lyra's hands, looking directly into those beautiful, sad eyes. Through their fading connection, she tried to show Lyra what she had realized, that some prices were too high to pay, that healing wasn't always the answer, that sometimes the greatest act of love was accepting loss instead of trying to transfer it to someone else. Lyra's response was immediate and heartbreaking. Elena felt waves of guilt and shame flowing from the alien woman as she finally understood what her people had become. For the first time in her long life, Lyra saw her species' gift for what it really was, a curse that consumed everything it touched. The sounds from outside were getting louder and more frightening. Elena could hear Colonel Harrison barking orders into his radio, calling for backup and evacuation procedures. The transferred emotions were spreading beyond the local wildlife now, affecting humans in the nearby town. People were reporting strange feelings, sudden bursts of anger or sadness that seemed to come from nowhere. Elena realized that they were witnessing the beginning of a cascade effect that could eventually affect the entire planet. If they didn't stop this process now, Earth would follow the same path as Lyra's homeworld. The healing would spread, creating more imbalances that required more healing, until every living thing on the planet was either dead or driven insane by emotions that didn't belong to them. Elena looked around the chaotic laboratory, at the confused soldiers and panicking scientists, at the equipment that was sparking and smoking from Lyra's unstable energy. She thought about the crashed spacecraft buried in the snow outside, still sending signals to Lyra's people somewhere in the distant darkness of space. Elena understood that there was only one way to stop this. She had to make sure that Lyra's people never received the signal they were waiting for. She had to ensure that Earth's location remained hidden from a species that would consume it in their well-meaning attempts to heal the universe. Elena turned to Lyra and showed her what she intended to do. The alien woman's response was immediate protest. She couldn't understand why Elena would choose destruction over healing, why anyone would refuse a gift that could save so many lives. But as Elena shared her memories of her daughter, of the beauty and complexity of Earth's natural world, of the delicate balance that made life possible on this planet, Lyra began to understand. She saw what Elena saw, that some gifts were too dangerous to accept, that some forms of help caused more harm than they prevented. Elena led Lyra out of the station, past the confused soldiers, and through the chaos of aggressive animals that surrounded the building. The alien woman's presence was still affecting the local ecosystem, but Elena hoped that distance might help reduce the damage. They made their way through the snow to the crashed spacecraft, its alien hull still pulsing with that strange, shifting light. Elena could feel the energy radiating from the ship, the signals that were calling to Lyra's people across the vast emptiness of space. Elena looked at Lyra one last time, trying to memorize every detail of that beautiful, otherworldly face. Through their fading mental connection, she felt the alien woman's acceptance of what had to happen. Lyra finally understood that her greatest act of healing would be to stop herself from healing. Elena found the ship's power source, a crystalline structure that hummed with more energy than she could comprehend. She knew that destroying it would create an explosion that would vaporize everything within several miles. It would silence the signals forever, ensuring that Lyra's people would never find Earth. As Elena prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, she thought about all the children who would never be cured of their diseases because of her choice. All the suffering that would continue because she had rejected a miracle. The guilt was overwhelming, But Elena held on to the image of her daughter running through a garden full of living things, laughing with pure joy at the beauty of a world that would survive because of the choice her mother made. The last thing Elena saw was Lyra's face, peaceful at last, no longer carrying the burden of her people's terrible gift. Together they had Cho,